engine repair test 5 and 6. This is from chapters 5 and 6. There's a lot of chapters in this book. We got to blow through this as blow through them as quick as we can. Engines can be classified by the size, configuration, and firing order. That's pretty well true. Okay, you know the firing order of a, and I always like to do this. You know the firing order of a. Everybody knows firing order of a 350 Chevrolet, right?
Yes, Councilman.
Huh?
184. 184.
Keep going.
3, 6, 5, 2, 7.
No, 7.2.
7.2. I was going to tell you the firing order.
350, yeah, 350 Chevrolet is 1843657.2. A 302 Ford, the older ones, was 1542637.8. The hot rod vehicles that you can change the firing order on a 302 and give it a little more power, and so the Mustangs, the later, some of the, they started making a 1372654.8 firing order. That's the same firing order that Crown Victorias have. It's the same firing order that Bronco out there's got, 1372654.8. And the all they did, if you look at the way they did the numbers, all they did was move some cylinders around. The framework is basically the same except for that. The 3.8 liter, if you've got the 3 liter engine in that Mercury Sable out there is 142536. Can you remember that? 142536. Say that. 142536. 142536. On a straight 6 is 153624.
You know what the firing order of my truck is?
What?
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. Are you sure?
I doubt it, Jeremy.
Jeremy, you're making it up as you go.
It's 1.
4-cylinder engines usually have what firing order? 4-cylinder straight 4s.
1, 4 is 1, 4.
No, 1, 3, 4, 2. 1, 3, 4, 2. You know why? You know how it has to be that way? Because 1 and 4 are companions, and 2 and 3 are companions. See what I'm saying? So the next one in the firing order is not going to be the companion. It can't be.
Oh, yeah.
You got that? Here, put that on the desk. Hold on, that's from Curly.
You want this too?
Hand that to the Stokes. All right. Okay, now remember them firing orders because you need to know them. All right, got that? One day on that 350 out there was a guy named Ray that was working. It was here, and we would put them put the distributor in. I'd pull the distributor out and pull all the wires off and spin it over and make everybody drop it back in there. And old Jimmy Batchelor could put that thing back together. And with the distributor laying on the floor, he could walk up there, find number 1, drop it in, get it wired up, and fire it up in 3.5 minutes. He was real fast getting them set up back together.
I remember doing that 350.
Yeah, the 350. But what happened was Ray went out there one day. He did not know anything about firing orders or nothing else. He just going to wing it. And he just wired that thing up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I don't know where he pointed the rotor, but it fired up. Run over for 2. But I said, boy, that runs terrible. How you got it wired up? And he just showed me. I couldn't believe he even got it to start. Anyway, so I've seen stuff around here just defies logic, Number 2, the firing order of an engine is the order in which the cylinders go through the exhaust stroke. Well, they actually go through the exhaust stroke in the same order that they go through the... if you actually track them, they go in the same order, but the firing order is firing. That's basically firing events is what you're talking about. Huh? Yeah, it's a falsy. The formula to determine CID, displacement, is bore squared times stroke, number of cylinders, times 3.14 times 4. That's false. Unless you're an engineer, why do you really need to know that? You know what I'm saying? You can find that. All you're basically doing is you're finding the volume of a cylinder. You know what I'm saying? And you can do that. One method used to diagnose engine mechanical problems is to measure cylinder compression using a compression gauge, and everybody in here has done that, I think, right by this time. The camshaft rotation is timed to correspond perfectly with the crankshaft. Is that right, Matt?
What is it?
All right. The camshaft rotation is timed to correspond perfectly with the crankshaft.
Yeah.
This is called what?
Dome. That's what ignition time.
Is
Valve
it?
timing.
Valve timing. Valve timing, okay. The order of the strokes in a 4-stroke cycle engine are what?
Intake, compression, power, exhaust.
That's A, intake, compression, power, and exhaust. Suck, squeeze, bang, blow. Remember that. The piston connects to the connecting rod through the the piston pin. You know, I'd say wrist pin. They call that piston pin here. The vehicle identification number character that defines the engine type is which one?
8th, isn't it?
The 8th one. That's right. The 8th character. Now you guys know how to do the. And I got to go over this just briefly for some of the new guys that y'all. Did you remember doing the serial number identification of your model?
I remember going over it, but I don't remember how to do it.
Okay, listen to what I'm telling you now. See if you can burn this in. This is verbal, right? They started in 1980 doing that. Now, some 1980 models were a little behind and didn't have that. My Ford pickup that I had, it was an 80 model. They hadn't started using it on that particular Ford yet. But in 1980, they started with A. They went through the alphabet. They did not use I, O, Q, U, or Z.
Why?
Because they look like the numbers and stuff. A U and a V look almost just like when somebody writes them, so they want to confuse that. See, so they said what we need. They had a plan, they had a vision for that, I believe.
How does Z look like any number?
It's like a 2.
A V, you mean? No, it doesn't look like a number. It just looks like a U. I mean, a U and a V look. A C, you mean?
Z.
Oh, a Z looks like a 2. But basically,
People write a 2 like this. Like,
yeah. But the long and the short of it was, who messed up my eraser? That thing just made a mess out of my board. But anyway, that thing, look, remember, A is 1980. 2000 is Y.
Why? What you?
Y. 2000 is Y. A is 1980. And they did not use I, O, Q, U, or Z.
Then they started using numbers.
Now, starting in 2001, they started using numbers. However, in 2010, they went back to letters.
What they use letters?
A, B, C, the same way. If they starting over, see, they spread them out to make sure that you would never confuse a 2010 with an 80 model. I mean, but so they started again. They don't use I, O, Q, U, or Z. They didn't really need the Z because they're going to go to 2000. They're going to go to a 1 in 2001. See what I'm saying? So they had a certain number of letters that they needed. It was a 20-year deal, so they got rid of some letters. All right. Now the long and the short of it was, if you can remember that, you can figure out the year model of just it's the 10th digit of that 17-digit serial number. I don't care if it's a Hyundai. I don't care if it's a Toyota or a Peugeot. If it's sold in these United States, that 10th digit is going to tell you what year it is. Now, what we've also had, and we've had that Jackie Woods, the welding instructor, had a little Nissan something or other, and we put it up on the lift, and we ordered some brake parts for it. I asked the guys, tell me what year model that car is. They open the door, they look on that sticker at the production date. Well, that's foggy because sometimes they'll put a production date. You know, they'll start building it like if you look at the production date on that that Expedition out there, the production date is in May of 2001 or something. I mean, it's crazy, and it'll confuse you into thinking it's a different year model. George Baum had a Dodge Dakota or something, his wife had an accident on it. It caved the door in, and the body shop found another door that was already the same color, which they do that nowadays. They'll say, give me a door for a 2002 Dodge Dakota and make it a purple one if you got one. See, if they don't have to paint it, it saves them work. And so they put that door on there, and it's a perfect match. But the sticker that was on the door was for a year model that was one removed and had a totally different serial number on it. See what I'm saying? So if you open the door, you can't tell this is not the door that came on a vehicle, but you're looking at bad information there. The long and the short of it is, under the glass, the 10th digit on the serial number is going to give you good stuff. All right. Now, let me back up and say, I said that to say this. The engine, the 8th digit on the engine, cars have got all kinds of engines in them. And so you're not going to, it's universal that the 8th digit is going to tell you what the engine is, but they don't have a universal code for that like they do your model.
To the car.
Huh?
It's relevant to the car.
Yeah, it's actually proprietary for the car company. All right, so let me see here. The cylinder the CID displacement can be increased by doing what? Boring an engine. You're going to slightly do that. All right. That means that what you got to do is you got to tell it a lot of long stories, which is what I do. I can bore an engine or anybody else. Technician A says there are 2 horsepower ratings. Technician B says net horsepower is available when the accessories are installed. Who's correct about that?
I know there's 2 different horsepower ratings because there's flywheel, rating to the flywheel and rating to the wheel.
Yeah, brake horsepower
Brake
is what
horsepower.
you know that, and that basically the way that they dyno the thing, has got to do with that.
I don't know actually.
My brother had a 71 Thunderbird that had that Mustang 429 in it. It had 375 horsepower. That thing was a stud. As a matter of fact, on my Technical Rider Facebook page, I've got a picture of that car, and it was just like a brand new car when he got it.
That S10, we had with the small walk on it, push it 550 horsepower with the back wheels.
Yep.
Big old motor, 572.
You can.
Oh, we got one of these trucks.
Compression ratio that's too high can result in what? Pre-ignition and detonation. I'll tell you something else that it does too. If you build an engine that's got really high compression, it's probably not going to go as long before it needs an overhaul. If you got low tension piston rings and you got a lower compression engine, it's just going to last a lot longer.
Mr. Richard, wasn't 10-8?
Huh?
10.
10? Yeah, 10 was a C.
C.
Yeah. Number 12. Technician A says a gasoline engine compression gauge can be used on a diesel engine. Is that right?
Not necessarily. Depends on how
Where do you
fast-
screw the gasoline engine compression gauge in?
in the spark plug hole.
Does a diesel engine have a
No.
spark plug hole? No, it does not even have that. You're typically going to check the compression on a diesel engine by screwing it into the glow plug hole, or you may even have an adapter where the injector is. But the ones that I've done, we would have we take the glow plug out and screw it in there. And what's the compression usually on a diesel?
I don't know.
Number 12 is B, by the way. A diesel engine's going to have a 450 to 500 pounds of compression. It's going to have a.
Yeah, well, how many spark plugs does the diesel have?
Yeah, well. The piston skirt diameter. Well, look at, Matt, what the deal is on a diesel. If you squeeze air and you get it, when you squeeze air, it gets hot. Right? If you're supercharging an engine, you're actually compressing the air and shoving it into the intake. If you've got one that's set up right, you'll be running that air through an intercooler to cool the air off after you squeeze it. So what you're wanting is cold, pressurized air going into your intake. That increases the volumetric efficiency of the engine. But a diesel engine capitalizes on the fact that when you squeeze air, it gets hot. And so with 2 pounds of 2 degrees Fahrenheit for every pound of compression, the air in that cylinder, when that piston comes to the top, is going to be 1,000 degrees. All right, if you got 1,000-degree air and you spray some atomized diesel fuel in there, it's going to light off. That's just all there is to it. And that's how a diesel runs. Now, I will tell you, when the engine is really cold, whenever everything, the second law of thermodynamics dictates that everything's going to be the same temperature unless something heats it up. That's just basically all it is, too. Huh?
You use glow plug.
You fire up, when you switch it on, you fire up those glow plugs. And they produce enough heat so
Is
that,
that why you got to wait a second before you turn the engine on?
because the glow plugs need to warm it up. And the glow plug looks like it's right here. That's a glow plug. I can hook that glow plug up to 12 volts over. I ground that and hook 12 volts out, and it'll get red hot real fast.
Isn't it hard, like if you run a diesel all the way out of gas, it's hard to prime it back?
It'll mess it up. You ain't supposed to put no ether in a diesel engine.
I run the
No, I say if you're running out of gas, like completely out, like, isn't it hard to prime it?
Well, yeah, on some diesels it is. On some of them it's not. Now, on a lot of these Power Stroke diesel engines will prime it themselves.
Yeah, like the house I got trapped. So
Now, you will have to, like if it's got an injector pump, what you got to do is you got to loosen the lines at the injectors and spin it over until it pushes all the air out of those lines. Then when you tighten it up, it'll usually go ahead and bust off. I've done it.
We got down there being on the cycling. When it runs out of gas, it's got a little squeeze ball. You squeeze it a couple of times and prime it.
Yeah, they got that. And some of the diesel engines, even these Duramax diesel engines, have got a priming pump on the fuel pump, on the fuel filter. It's a thing you pump to fill it up. See, because Duramax, the ones that, I don't know how they're making them now. I need to study up on that. But anyway, the one initially they counted on the vacuum that the fuel pump created to draw fuel from the tank. Now, in your Power Stroke, they always had a fuel pump. They'd have a fuel pump that pumped it up there easy. But Bosch was the fuel injector people for the Duramax, and they always like just to let their injector pump draw the fuel up. Okay, now let's look at this one here. Piston skirt diameter is usually about how much smaller than the cylinder bore? That's 1/1000th of an inch, guys. 1/1000th of an inch smaller. So what's the piston skirt? Let me see that piston, Matt. Bring me that piston. This nice new piston. I'm always waving this piston around in here. This is the standard piston. The piston skirt is this. Piston skirt's that part right there. All right. Now you might notice this thing right here is kind of bumpy on the side. That's so that oil will have somewhere to be. So the newer ones will have graphite there to make it real slippery, you know. But that's a piston for an older engine. I think it goes in a 302. I don't know. But all right, now blank valve timing changes the timing of the camshaft in relation to the crankshaft at different speeds and conditions. That's variable valve timing. Yeah. And this gear right here is off of an F-150. This gear right here does that. See that gear whenever it uses variable valve timing. It changes the timing of it changes the relationship between the cam and the crankshaft, and it also has this little sensor ring, and and these go bad. Those gears will go bad, and you'll have to change them out sometimes. But when the fuel injector squirts fuel in the firing sequence during the intake stroke, it's considered what? Sequential.
SFI.
Where does it squirt that fuel at?
Do what?
Where does it squirt the fuel at? Where's the fuel injector squirt the fuel at?
On what?
Gas burner. Regular old gas car like your Escort.
Does it spray it as it's in the fire?
I mean, is it spray? No, I didn't say when. I said where does it actually spray it at? And it doesn't spray it right into the cylinder.
Sprays it in the intake.
Sprays it behind the valve. I mean, it's pointing right at the back of the intake valve. You see, and everything's happening so fast that gas is still, there's a bunch of air flowing through there. That gas is being carried in there as a mist anyway. Number 16. The proper term for distributorless ignition system is what? EI. Distributorless ignition can also be coil pack,
Yeah.
Turbochargers, EI. Turbochargers and superchargers increase the what pressure entering the cylinder? Air pressure. That increases the volumetric efficiency. What does that mean? What's the volumetric efficiency talking about anyway? Somebody's talking about engine stuff. You've got, if I turn that 3-liter engine 2 full turns and I was able to, let the air go in there that it was able to pull in, like if I did it right, it would have, it'd have 3 liters of air. If I caught it all in a bag out at the tailpipe coming out the back, it moved 3 liters of air. 2 full turns, you move 3 liters of air. On yours, you'd move 455 cubic inches of air.
Oh, I didn't know that.
2 full turns is how much air you're going to catch. Now, as that air is going in there, it's going to make curves. It's having to go down through these passages. And air is like anything else. If it gets to going too fast, it just can't all make it in there. It gets the door slammed in its face before all of it gets in there. And so the percentage of volumetric efficiency is going to be, you're not going to have 3 full liters of air coming out of that thing every 2 turns when it's running because things are happening too fast, and that air can only move so fast. You know what I mean? Okay, so if you want to increase your volumetric efficiency percentage, you force it in there by naturally aspirating it. Some of these yahoos, and I know some of you guys that are hot rod people have seen this, don't go to sleep on me, Matt. Did you know they won't let you put your head down in a beer joint?
What?
If you're in a beer joint and you're sitting at the bar and you put your head down, they'll come by and make you pick it up. They don't want you going to sleep at the bar. So if they don't allow it in the beer joint, we don't allow it in the classroom. All right. So anyway, of course, there's some things they allow in a beer joint we don't allow in the classroom. But, not that I've been in a beer joint lately, but Anyway, the long and the short of it is, some of these guys take these little fans. They'll take a little, like a blower fan.
Yeah, stick it in the intake.
And put it there so that they're trying to have an electric fan blowing air into their intake to help a little bit with the volumetric. And I'm sure it has an impact of sorts, but it seems kind of...
They got one in there that does that. You can buy it. You stick it on the throttle button.
Yeah.
And when it spins, this spins the air and forces it.
Supposed to, yeah. And I don't, like I say, it's just not as strong as a supercharger or a turbocharger. Now, a supercharger is turned by a belt, and turbocharger is turned by exhaust. That's the difference between those two. And on some of your big diesel engines, you'll have turbochargers feeding superchargers. You know,
I
this
just
kind
put
of,
a blower on mine.
yeah. Well, yeah, that helps. The blower that you're talking about, though, it's got big vanes in it that actually is forcing the air in there. You know, the one that's got them.
Right.
Yeah, that's not just there's what you're talking about is ram air. That's basically driving down the road, letting the wind be forced in that way. But most of the time, when you see this thing poking up with them flappers in it, it's got a 671 Detroit blower under it, which is actually, got these odd shaped rollers in there. And those things are interesting too, because they don't look like they would move a lot of air. But you can take one of those blowers on the bench. I used to see the guys that are working on them big diesels back there. Detroit engines won't even run without a blower on them. They'll idle, but they won't pull. They would take that blower and they lay a shop rag on it, and he could spin that blower with his hand, and it would blow that shop rag off the top of that blower, just spinning it with his fingers. That's how much air that thing moves. Those rollers can't touch each other either. They don't touch each other. They're so close together you can't even hardly see between them. But they're really moving some air. Anyway, 19. What's used to measure engine horsepower?
We have 18.
Huh?
18.
18. Excuse me. To improve fuel economy, manufacturer using lightweight vehicles all over the vehicle. They're using aluminum and plastic like you wouldn't believe. Actually, you would believe if you've been working on cars lately. And dynamometer is the answer to 19. That measures engine horsepower. Number 20, the blank is the distance the piston travels from bottom dead center to top dead center. The stroke.
Oh,
That's the stroke. Sometimes when you insert a blank in there, it makes you draw a blank, don't it? All right. Now then, that finishes up test number 5-6.